President Trump take the stage. Thousands, and I mean thousands, of people. This is what we see at every rally.
When Trump was in, everything was low, you could live, everything was great. Now it's a disaster.
Prices have gone up about 25%, and it's not the same anymore.
The Biden administration has made our lives worse by every statistical measure.
He fights for the American people versus all the other people that are coming into our country.
And he's going to fix our nation. Joe Biden's only going to give it to China and Ukraine.
He's the best guy out there. The immigration stuff's got to stop.
He is America's last stand. He is America's last chance.
We need a leader who's going to fight.
President Trump is, well, he's mentally fit and he's physically fit for office.
Everything was better when President Trump was in office.
We're going to win Pennsylvania. We're all in this for one common goal, and that is to save this country.
Make our nation great again. Amen.
Take a look at what happened.
I don't even know what to say right now. Apparently, we have shots fired. Apparently, there are medics at the podium right now. Oh my God. Yes! Yes!
Continuing special coverage now here in Real America's Voice of the attempted assassination of the former President Donald Trump.
You would think that the sniper team would be focused on that building. It's the obvious place for someone to go.
Nobody reacted in time.
That is a failure, and frankly, heads need to roll over that.
Something I've never seen in my lifetime.
Trump is wearing the armor of God, and he will continue to fight on.
People need to understand this is not going to get better. It's going to get worse before it gets better.
You don't think they want him dead? You'd be sadly mistaken.
This is just going to make him stronger, and I just pray it wakes more people up across this country.
We all kind of knew that somewhere along the line, some nut job would take it upon themselves to listen to the celebrities, to listen to the New York Times opinion writers.
This is an explosion of emotion, spirituality, and patriotism that, once again, it feels like 9/12.
Almost more of a sign that we need Donald Trump as our next president.
We know that President Trump was touched by the hand of God yesterday, spared by the hand of God.
It is now official. Donald Trump has been elected president, defeating Vice President Kamala Harris and making a political comeback unlike any in modern American politics.
Historic executive order to ban men from competing in women's sports. Illegal border crossings, the lowest ever recorded, ever. And a freeze on all foreign aid.
You're either going to make a deal or we're out.
I declared a national energy emergency. Drill, baby, drill. I withdrew from the unfair Paris Climate Accord. We ordered all federal workers to return to the office, ending the flagrant waste of taxpayer dollars. We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our country will be woke no longer. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries.
We support Donald Trump's policy.
tariffs 100%.
This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back. It will be like nothing that has ever been seen before. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
Live from Tampa, it's the Student Action Summit on Real America's Voice. Students and young patriots gather to ignite the fight for life, liberty, and the pursuit to party. Get ready for powerhouse speakers like Donald Trump Jr., Secretary Kristi Noem, plus Rav's own Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon, and Jack Posobiec. Over 5,000 energized voices from all 50 states. This is the generation ready to boldly defend America's freedom. The Student Action Summit starts right now.
And welcome back, everybody. I am Mike Crispy. This is Real America's Voice, and we are here in Tampa, Florida at the Student Action Summit hosted by Turning Point USA, and it has been an unbelievable day. Great speakers, and the event is just getting started, everybody. I'm joined by Bo Davidson, Michelle Backus, and, of course, Ben Bergquam, who decided to stand on the platform with us, and now he's much taller. Big day so far. Michelle, what has been your main takeaways?
I would say that there are a lot of passionate kids here that are ready to make a difference. The youth vote is not lost. In fact, I think we have a lot of things to look forward to.
Yeah, Michael Knowles was here earlier, and I know we have some others to look forward to, such as Tucker Carlson. He's certainly made the news lately, Ben. I think there's a lot of things that are happening with Tucker. What's your opinion of Tucker?
Yeah, it's really interesting, the whole shift in political dynamics. The camps that are kind of organizing and who's for this topic, whether it's Iran or Israel or now with Epstein, and just there is a lot happening. You know what's crazy is has it even been a week since Trump signed the big beautiful bill? 1 week today. We're not even talking about that. I mean, the movement in politics is so insane. Now, obviously, the disaster in Texas that took center stage at the beginning of the week kind of took the air out of the room. Obviously, major devastation. President Trump being there today, but here today, it's been everything that's happening in the DOJ, the FBI, talking about Pam Bondi, and now Kash Patel saying that if Dan Bongino goes, he's going to go. Just some interesting things happening in politics, while to the backdrop of what Michelle said. Amazing group of young people, what Turning Point USA is doing, cultivating that next generation, creating a bench. We have what the Democrats don't have. We are building a bench for the future of leaders that actually know what they believe and why they believe it. Not just mindless robots, not just the simps that just follow what everyone else says. This is incredibly refreshing to see the young people on the MAGA side that are standing up. And again, are willing to stand up and say, yes, we want the Epstein. We don't trust what's happening. Even if that's our president, we're willing to stand up and say this is not okay.
And another element, Ben, that you mentioned off to our left here is Steve Bannon, who just got finished with War Room. He's with a host of people doing a meet and greet right now. I don't know if we have that camera angle you guys can show, but Steve is meeting with all of his fans right now. Everybody knows Steve Bannon. And there's something, Ben, that you said a moment ago that I think you should explain to our viewers is the MAGA economy, what that means and where that's going and what it's come back from.
Yeah, so this is what you see across every sort of MAGA event, from President Trump rallies to what CPAC has become, to all of Turning Point's events. There's an entire building set up over there. And by the way, Mike, it was Sheath, not Stealth. Just so we're
no teleprompter. We've been joking about that all day.
But I do want to see. So you have a whole room set up for companies that support MAGA, that want to come out here, and they're not necessarily a MAGA company. You know, some of it's like insurance and other things. But these companies are willing to come out and stand up and not be afraid to say, I support America. There's a shift in our country that's happening. Under the first 4 years of President Trump, you had all the media, except for ourselves and a couple others, lined up against President Trump and MAGA. Now you have an entire new generation of media. During Trump's first term, you had businesses that were all afraid to come out and support the America First agenda. Now you have an entire room full of businesses that you would never, ever think would be out there supporting President Trump. The one thing I want to see, I know we got the Trump knife. I want to see the Trump AR-15 extra assault version. But that's just a wish list for me.
We got a lot of entrepreneurs here, so maybe someone's going to do that.
But Bo, there are major things happening. We are the counterculture. You can see that happening. But if we continue on the trajectory that we're on, we're going to become the culture again, and that is good for America.
Indeed. Well, speaking of culture, Michelle, you're younger than me. I can say that because I've got probably a decade on you. But we talked earlier with Sam Sorbo. I know we'll get to that interview eventually about how young women are being persuaded by, let's call it non-conservative factors, witchcraft, tarot cards, you name it, all these different things, and they're
demons,
demonic activity. Whereas men seem to be seeking the kingdom of God, which is interesting. Why do you think, Michelle, that you're seeing a younger generation of females being swept by these cultural influences?
That really is the golden question, isn't it? Look, I think there are a multitude of factors, but I will say, just from speaking with a lot of girls my age, speaking on the streets to a lot of girls, women are frustrated and they're bitter. And there's this very interesting divide where, especially in my age group, I'll date myself here, I'm 29, you were told to go to college and get a job and work hard and climb the ladder, and feminism was pushed on you. In fact, here's an admission, I used to be a feminist, at least I thought I was, a long time ago. And so, you do go through these steps, and then you look at the women who have dedicated their lives to their career, not to Jesus, not to raising a family, not to finding a soulmate and building these relationships. And then you look back, and it's truly that question of, what do you actually have to live for? Yes, you have this career, but a lot of women are feeling empty. And I think that goes for younger generations as well. These younger women are sold this idea of feminism, this woke culture, and they believe it. And now a lot of them are waking up and realizing that this isn't actually what they want. I think it's a product of trying to destroy the nuclear family. I think it has very nefarious intentions from big government. And that's exactly why this type of thing has to exist, to show that there is a counterculture, that we can reproduce and you can have a stable family union. And that's really, honestly, what I've seen from TikTok as well, Mike. You see the trad wife movement. I'm not sure if you guys know that term.
It's a good thing. I mean, we're talking about the men, and it was asked in the interview that we did earlier, we're talking about who are the role models that the young people look up to. And we were talking about how in the male ecosphere, you have people, you talked about it, Bo, President Trump, J.D. Vance. There are other influencers. But on the female side, it's kind of hard to identify. And I think you pointed that out. And it is, or Michelle, both of you did, because you're both brilliant. But it's a great point, is that the female heroes are the ones who are raising the families. They're off the, social media grid. They're not, but they're not chasing, fame. They're doing it for their family, so they don't get the credit. I want to acknowledge our sponsor here, and then we're going to go back to the stage. And want to give you a word from our sponsor, XTI Aerospace. Guys, XTI Aerospace is revolutionizing the way the world travels with the TriFan 600, a cutting-edge vertical takeoff and landing airplane that blends the vertical takeoff capability of a helicopter with the speed, comfort, and range of a business jet. Designed to carry up to 7 occupants, the TriFan 600 offers a seamless point-to-point travel experience, lifting off vertically, bypassing traffic in airports, and flying at speeds of over 300 miles an hour for up to 1,000 miles. With the ability to land wherever a helicopter can, it eliminates the need for traditional runways, delivering unmatched flexibility and efficiency. Powered by 100% sustainable aviation fuel, the TriFan 600 cuts CO2 emissions by up to 80%, setting a new benchmark for environmentally responsible aviation. As global demand grows for smarter, faster, and cleaner air mobility, XTI Aerospace stands at the forefront of the emerging vertical economy. The company's mission aligns with the executive order on unleashing American drone dominance, aimed at accelerating America's innovation in manned and unmanned VTOL aircraft. Backed by a seasoned team with experience certifying over 40 FAA-approved aircraft, XTI Aerospace is actively pursuing FAA certification for the TriFan 600 and is well positioned to lead the next wave of aerospace innovation. XTI Aerospace is publicly traded on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol XTIA. Go check them out right now. And we are going to now go back into the main room where the programming continues at SAS, hosted by Turning Point USA. Take it away.
Classical Christian school. Generational suffering comes from a corruption of leadership. That's the curse that happens generationally. What all of you are doing are creating a movement to break that curse.
Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Well, let me tell you something. Those B-2 pilots in Missouri hear you loud and clear. Hey, what an honor it is to be here. I am so grateful. I want to thank Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. I didn't just show up here now. I've been here year after year because I believe so deeply in the mission of what you all represent. So give it up for Charlie Kirk, please. Obviously, this job, my day job, is the greatest professional honor I've had in my life. The opportunity to lead and serve our warriors. It's incredible. But let me start by saying, and a little bit of a message to all of you, because I'm looking out at the future of America. I think I might be looking out at some future warriors out here. And we'll get to that in a moment. I hope some of you do choose that path to raise your right hand to defend the Constitution and defend the nation, because we're going to need it. But at the same time, as I focus on, getting our military back on track and doing that job and serving the greatest commander-in-chief our country has had, we also have to remind ourselves priorities, that ultimately we serve God first. And that's the first question I ask myself every day. Am I honoring God with my actions? Am I putting Him first? And I think no matter how big your job is or how big your challenges are you seeking Him in the Word and in prayer? That's how the day needs to start, because everything else goes sideways when it doesn't. And then number two is serving your family, remembering what it's all about. My wife and daughter are here somewhere in the fog, but our 6 other kids, one of which is 15 and other of which are 14, they could and should be in this audience, and they will be soon. How am I serving them? How am I directing them and giving them the perspective that all of you have about their Lord and Savior and about this country and about the threats we face and their duty to do something about it? That's my job as a father and as a husband. So yes, we're fighting for our country, but God and family come first, and I hope you remember that in all of your great pursuits, in everything that you focus on in your own life. I have had the incredible opportunity, and I wish everyone here get a chance to be in the Oval Office, and you see him because he's the most transparent president we've ever had. But to watch President Trump, whether it's the Oval Office or the Situation Room or in foreign countries, he does so much, but ultimately his willingness to put America first, apply common sense, and execute peace through strength is the core of what I get a chance to see every day. And by the way, you don't get peace without the strength part. And that's my department, the strength department. And so I actually think we lead at the Defense Department, or maybe soon to be the Department of War. for all the right reasons. We lead the biggest peace department in the world. Our job is to be strong and ready and lethal so that you never have to use us. And if you use us, our capabilities are so overwhelming, our threat so looming, that we're able to conclude that mission swiftly and violently to the interests of the United States, or not have to use us at all. So the peace is preserved and deterrence sticks. And I'll never forget President Trump.
Breaking news from Real America's Voice.
John Solomon live back in Washington, D.C. John's got breaking news from the FBI. John Solomon, Steve Bannon here at Turning Point Student Action Summit. What do you got for us, brother?
Hey,
we got a big
listen,
live audience
there are
for you.
reports out there tonight that Kash Patel is considering resigning alongside of Dan Bongino. It is not true. My reporting makes very clear Kash Patel is going nowhere unless the president tries to move Kash Patel. He's there for the long haul. Why is that? Because the FBI has a major investigation that looks at the last 10 years of what happened to Donald Trump as one large conspiracy case. No one's going to give that opportunity up. Now, it is true that Dan Bongino is taking a few days to reconsider whether he wants to stay in the job. That's his decision. He's gone through these things before. There have been times when he's been on radio, he got mad, took a couple days off. I bet you he'll come back when it's all done. But Kash Patel is going nowheres. And I think next week, over the next 10 days, the base who's been wondering, where's all that accountability? They're going to get some big surprises over the next week concerning where the conspiracy began a few weeks before Crossfire Hurricane was open and when it ended, all the way in 2024, when they were still trying to pursue Donald Trump to keep him from winning the presidency. There's a big case that's been built by the Justice Department and the FBI. It's been masked by a lot of this infighting and drama and soap opera stuff, but the truth of the matter is MAGA base Americans are going to be happy when they see where this is all heading in the next few weeks. Kash Patel is going nowhere. I hope Dan Bongino isn't going anywhere, but I do think he's going to take some time over the weekend to think that through.
So hold it. We got three huge leads there.
Yep.
Number one, I want to go back. You're saying the 10-year conspiracy against President Trump to try to thwart his first term, steal the second term, and basically surround him in his second term or third victory.
Yep.
That has been an ongoing investigation that the FBI has already doing.
Yeah.
Does the
There's
Brennan
been a conspiracy
leak
case.
last
There was
week,
hinted at. In fact,
Brennan,
this was hinted at, Steve, in some of the media reporting, but I've got it confirmed. There's a conspiracy case that was opened that looks at this window as a very large window. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a special prosecutor named by Pam Bondi in the next week or two. And why does this become significant? Because you don't have to necessarily then bring the grand jury or the indictment in Washington, D.C., where the 90% Democrat jury pool probably won't convict even if they had a murder. It allows them to go to someplace like Florida. One act of the overt conspiracy could very well be, Steve, that they raided President Trump's Mar-a-Lago house with false pretenses. And then you can bring the grand jury in Florida. You can bring the indictment in Florida because an overt act of the conspiracy occurred there. Maybe several overt acts of the conspiracy occurred there. You don't have to have a all-blue jury in Washington, D.C. that has Trump derangement syndrome. So this has been going on behind the scenes. I've been working on this. I decided tonight to get some of this out there. I've been talking about it in my show. This is a really big deal. Now, who becomes a special prosecutor? How far-ranging is it? That's to be determined by the scope memo that a Pam Bondi would write. But there is some work on a scope memo that's been done already, and there is an enormous opportunity for those of us who've been calling for accountability to see a path to it for the first time, a legitimate path, not smoke, not mirrors, a legitimate path to accountability.
Also, let me just ask you on this conspiracy, does that mean, because people talk about the statute of limits and you can only get Brennan for perjury, lying to Congress, that you can't get him for everything involved in Crossfire Hurricane, everything involved with the nullification project, the Russian hoax. Are you saying by being a criminal conspiracy that's still ongoing that we can go back in time 10 years and still get Brennan and still get all these guys for more serious charges of conspiracy of a coup d'etat, sir?
That's how conspiracy cases can work. You can charge a series of events into a larger conspiracy and go back beyond the window of time that the normal statute of limitations for any single crime occurred. And keep in mind, there's also, prosecutors can make a very powerful argument that if you didn't know the crime had occurred because it had been hidden, the statute of limitations could actually reset for a period of time. But I think the most likely scenario is a large conspiracy case, and it starts in the middle of July 2016 when John Brennan walks into President Obama 2 weeks before, or a few days before Crossfire Hurricane's launch, and said, hey, we have this intercepted information that Hillary Clinton has authorized a program to make it look like Donald Trump's a Russian spy and Vladimir Putin is helping him. President Obama and Brennan knew before the FBI opened up on that information that this was a dirty trick by Hillary Clinton. That would be the first overt act. And then it would carry all the way through Ukraine impeachment. It could go into the FBI refusing to look at the Chinese interference in the 2020 election as one of the overt acts. They didn't want to help Donald Trump, so they ignored a potential counterintelligence threat. It allows for a very large series of events to be wrapped into a single conspiracy and all of them to be brought into the indictment.
John, you mentioned Dan Bongino is going to take a couple of days to think about it. As he's thinking about it, is his demand that Pam Bondi resign? Is that what's on the table? If she doesn't resign, Dan Bongino is going to leave, or is he thinking about that statement he made, or at least somehow the press reporting it? He's given the president a play me or trade me. Either she goes or I go.
Yeah, it's unclear where the state of his thinking is. I think there are things that were said in the heat of a moment. Listen, Dan is a passionate guy. He's got a temper like a lot of passionate guys do. I got a temper, I got to admit that. You say things when you're in the heat of the moment, when you're working hard to try to get the right things done. I think everybody has to calm down for the next couple of days and reevaluate what's been said, what the temper tantrums were, and move beyond that and look at the big picture. All of these people are not talk show hosts. They came to serve the President of the United States. They serve at the pleasure, and they're supposed to only focus on their service to country and the President. I think some people just taking a deep breath, reevaluating that. Kash Patel's never been talking about, as far as any of my reporting shows, he's not thinking of resigning. He's actually been helping the Justice Department and others build an important case. I think that people will calm down. There'll be a reset of this now. Dan may choose to leave. You know, he's left other things in the past. He might stay in this. I think he would bring a lot to the table, as he had in the first few months of a deputy director. You look at some of the things that the president just shouted out about Dan and Kash earlier this week. The reduction in the murder rate, the big arrests, rounding up the gang members and the violent offenders and all the Chinese spies and poisoners that we're arresting. I think the president's been very happy with the FBI, and he's been very happy with the Justice Department. I doubt he's happy with all this sort of soap opera drama, but this is a weekend where things could be rebooted, and what things that might have been said can just wash under the bridge or not, depending how people act over the next few days.
In the conspiracy case they're putting together, is that going to have a reevaluation of Epstein, or is your understanding that the Epstein matter is dead and just move on?
Yeah, listen, I think people are going to be, I have probably read more Epstein documents than anyone. I'm probably the only person that read the 2019 OPR report from cover to cover on the prosecutor's misconduct or failures. I don't want to call it misconduct, that's the wrong word. Their failures or bad judgment in 2007 and 2008 when they could have got Epstein on much serious charges. When you look at the government has almost, over the last 10 years, piecemeal, revealed everything about it. It is what it is. The guy was a pervert. He was a child predator. He had some issues with financing. There isn't a whole lot more to be found. I know a lot of people say, oh, there is, and look what Alan Dershowitz said. I know what Alan Dershowitz is talking about. Alan Dershowitz is talking about the Black Book and the security logs, that you could take the security logs and the Black Book, the address book and everything, and you could come up with a client list. That's true, you could. But there isn't a ledger where, I'm telling you, because I've talked to agents who went all the way back to the beginning of this case, there was never a ledger that said, hey, I'm Jeff Epstein. On October 4th, I got $10,000 from politician B so he could sleep with this 14-year-old girl. There's no chance Jeff Epstein wrote that down. He wouldn't. And I think people have had a false expectation about how Jeff Epstein worked. and how the operation worked. It was all done on the QT. Now, if you went back and you read the great reporting that the Wall Street Journal did in 2023, we know exactly who the people were, where they were, what women were involved, because the judge released a lot of this in the case. And there's not a whole lot to be had. Now, I'm going to point you in one direction, and next week I'll come on your show once I get this nailed down. But there is one interesting piece of the Epstein case that I think could come out in the next week or two. He did have a relationship with the intelligence community. Now, he wasn't an asset. He wasn't a knock. He wasn't a controlled undercover agent. He had occasional interactions on some unusual stuff that the CIA might have been interested in, or other intelligence agencies. Some of that may go all the way back to Iran-Contra. I turned up some stuff a couple days ago where Jeff Epstein, a long time ago in an interview, acknowledged that when he left Bear Stearns, his first major financial gig, he took on a client named Khashoggi in Saudi Arabia. At the time, those two were working together by Jeff Epstein's account. Khashoggi was the guy that was helping the CIA carry out Iran-Contra. I think there is a few files at CIA that the American public deserve that would break new ground. It's kind of what I'm hearing from my reporting, a little creepy stuff, but classic intelligence stuff. I do think that is a legitimate place to demand disclosure, and I wouldn't be surprised if the president and John Ratcliffe take some action once I get what I know out into the public. But I don't think there's a lot more from the Justice Department. Pam Bondi, I think, botched the descriptions on this, raised expectations. They did the false handing out of the books, which was nothing but old, warmed over soup. But there isn't a whole lot more out there. And I think people are using different language, and it builds up an expectation for what the evidence is in there. I've seen over 30,000 pages of Epstein stuff over the last 5 years. I've written a lot about it because I care about it. I think we know most we're going to find out. I don't think there's a grand conspiracy to cover it up. Alan Dershowitz, right. You could probably figure out the clients, and it's too bad the Bush Justice Department dropped the ball back in 2008, because they could have served those women and the American people better. But there ain't a whole lot of stuff more to be had. I do think the intelligence community should tell us about their relationship with him. He's dead. There's no reason not to hide it. And I do think that's an area of inquiry. But I think the bigger thing for MAGA, for America, for this team at Justice and FBI, focus on what the president has opened the door for, a conspiracy case that looks at the last 10 years of weaponization as an ongoing criminal conspiracy. I think that's going to be the big news next week.
Does Pam Bondi make it?
Absolutely. Listen, I don't think Donald Trump wants any people to leave. I think he wants people to get back to doing their job, put their hurt butt feelings aside, stop making this a soap opera, and do the people's business. Donald Trump got his ass off the ground 5 seconds after being shot in the head, said fight, 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 and got right back to work. He doesn't like people that look for excuses not to do their job. I think what'll probably happen is that there'll be a reset meeting, right? And Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, and if Dan Bongino decides to stay, they'll all sit together with Susie. They'll get their act together. They'll focus on the big prize. Remember, they're public servants, not television prima donnas, and get back to the business of the people, which is all that Donald Trump wants of them.
John Solomon, where do we get the show, social media, all your writings? Where do people go?
I'm lucky enough to follow you every day after your 5 o'clock show on Real America's Voice, 6 o'clock on the RAV. JustTheNews.com is the website. Jay Solomon Reports, the handle on all of our social media accounts. And great job today. You guys are doing a fantastic job. Charlie deserves a lot of credit. What an amazing event. What a combination of great people and speakers and great coverage at RAV. I'm enjoying it, sitting in my office watching it tonight.
Let's give it up for John Solomon. Guys, I'm tossing it back to Central Control.
That the era of freeloading off America is also over. I'm a big fan of alliances, and we're a proud member of NATO. But an alliance can't just be about flags and conferences. It needs to be about formations and capabilities. Military alliances only work when you have actual hard power to bring to bear. And only because of President Trump is Europe stepping up and spending now what was inconceivable. Many of these countries were spending 1% on defense just in his first term. But because of President Trump's leadership, they're committed now to spending 5% of GDP on defense, which means they lead the way and we don't have to do it for them. So in closing, I just want to never forget that the motto of our great country, when I got criticism for starting a monthly prayer service at the Department of Defense, voluntary prayer service, I reminded our friends in the media, you know, the motto of our country is, "In God we trust." That the military has a long heritage of being on bended knee, appealing to heaven in the most impossible of situations. God's providence brought us here. Our founders understood that. So I want to commend you for being in these seats, for having the leadership that you have in your high schools, in your colleges, in your communities, for having the courage of your convictions to stand up and lead based on your principles. That is leadership. That is putting America first. That is showing strength, and I commend you for that. But I also hope, on behalf of a new and improved Department of Defense, that you will also take a look at serving your country, that you will consider the incredible lineage. Let me tell you something. I've never met someone who served, it's very few and far between, who regrets the day that they raised their right hand to defend their nation and try to test themselves to see whether they can stand up to the legacy of previous generations. Now, it's my job and it's President Trump's job to make sure we use those troops properly, that they're properly trained, that they have a clear mission, a limited objective that everyone understands. And they've got the best equipment in the world, which President Trump is providing. But what we really need are the best young Americans. So thank you for being here. God bless our warriors, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Gwenny.
And welcome back to the Real America's Voice coverage of SAS, the Student Action Summit, hosted by Turning Point USA. I am Mike Crispy, joined by Bo Davidson, Michelle Backus, and Ben Berquam. And Ben, Secretary of War, President Trump gave him a new title today. Pete Hegseth, just on the stage, what were your thoughts on the Hegseth speech? And he's had a very busy last couple of weeks, Secretary Hegseth.
Yeah, you know, he's one of those that you look at what's he's doing on with CENTCOM and everything on the border. There's just so much going on, obviously geopolitically around the world. I love the ending of that to actually, you think about that, I mean, who wanted to go into the military under Joe Biden? Nobody.
No
and if they did, they probably weren't the ones we wanted in there.
No,
now you have a
trannies.
Secretary of War with the president who's getting the Nobel Peace Prize nominations, hopefully, that people can actually trust. But I got to say, what came in between there was pretty interesting, too, with John Solomon. John Solomon, obviously, Just the News, what he's been doing for so long with Real America's Voice News, when it comes to research, there's no one I trust more doing their homework than John Solomon. So his, coming out and saying what he's saying, it's very interesting. I'm glad that is not true about Kash leaving. I love Kash. But you got to look at the base. We're talking about this offline and say, how do you get the base to understand and trust that when you came out and Pam Bondi said, it's all coming out.
Yeah.
We got the binders. Here's the first one.
Phase one.
Yeah. And then you come back and say, there's nothing there. If there was nothing there, then why come out and say that? And how do you get the trust back from that base if that's the case? Because we know there's that list. We know, and he even admitted that. We know there's a list. We know these guys were raping young girls. But if there's not evidence there to prove it, then they can't go after them. The whole thing is just still suspect to me. But if they go after Crossfire Hurricane, if they've got the conspiracy evidence there to get to the bottom of all that, that's a big deal if that comes out next week. A lot to unpack there.
Listen, I still think there are some holes that definitely need to be filled in. We've all heard the testimonies from countless victims that have been on Epstein's island. However, I will say this as well, John Solomon, one of the most trusted and smartest reporters that I've ever met personally, and I know that he does do his research. And another interesting thing, I want to reiterate this as well, he's confirming Kash Patel will not step down. The only way that Kash is leaving is if the president leaves. But what you're seeing right now on social media and hearing around here as well, is very different, as this has really taken center stage. The Epstein files, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel. Bo, your thoughts?
Yeah, and John said that Pam Bondi was going nowhere, which means that it sounds like there's going to be some sort of recalibration, a reset. We all sit down, we have an adult conversation, say, where do we go from here? To your point, Ben, about how do you get the trust back in the base? Well, what you said, if we go back to Crossfire Hurricane, if we look at the conspiracy dating back 10 years and can punt some of those statute of limitations back, maybe there is hope to give something really meaty and trustworthy right away.
That's it. The American people, MAGA base, are looking for justice. Yes. They want prosecutions. You start doing that, people's memory will fade on some of the other things.
And to put this into context, think about it. The past however many years during COVID, we were all lied to by our government. That's why you saw so many young voters step up. They wanted transparency. They were so sick of government lying to them. We put up with that forever. That was a massive campaign promise, and that's really what we need to deliver on.
And I think everyone can agree, no matter what, Pam Bondi, this thing came out unprovoked. Nobody put a gun to her head and forced her to do this. So she had all the time in the world to prepare it, and the way in which it was released on the Sunday night after July 4th, and then she didn't have answers when she was asked the question in the White House. She fumbled it and just talked about child porn and didn't address the questions that people were talking about. It was very, very clumsy, to say the least.
And the timing of it. We just had the big, beautiful bill. We should have been talking about that. Obviously, the disaster in Texas took the air out of the room for that, but it was just the timing. Everything was odd about it.
Well, to your point as well, Mike, Pam Bondi on Fox News multiple times with those sound bites going viral. So I'm just confused. I think there are holes that need to be filled in.
And we are going to take a break, and then we're going to bring you more from the stage at the Student Action Summit, hosted by Turning Point USA. Do not go anywhere.
Live from Tampa, welcome back to the Student Action Summit, right here on Real America's Voice.
And welcome back to the Student Action Summit, hosted by Turning Point USA. You are watching Real America's Voice, and we're going to bring you back to the main stage, Laura Ingraham, and a great list of speakers. We're going to give you that right now.
And I understand your concern, and I get the fact that you're very upset about this tonight. But I understand there may be some job openings at a few cannabis farms in California. Just saying. And by the way, I just covered this tonight on the Ingraham angle, but another great thing about actually doing this novel thing called enforcing immigration law is that we learn about what the Democrats really are all about. We learn about what they're hiding and why. So we learn just how badly these illegal immigrant youth, minors, are exploited after they're trafficked into the United States. We learn that Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and Jimmy Gomez, congressman there, and all of these other congressmen, Nancy Pelosi, because she always cares about the children. She's always invoking the children. We now know that not only do they not care about the children, they are completely fine and complicit in subsidizing the cartels that are getting paid by the slave wages that are made in these farms. Because guess what? A lot of this money goes back to the cartels to pay the debt that these young migrant youth owe the cartels. So by allowing these agri scams to continue and these food processing plant scams to continue, guess what the Democrats are allowing for? The exploitation of children. The use of children to keep this corrupt scam of low wages and the new indentured servant class going. So they're not worried that we have kids as young as 14 years of age working 13, 14 hours a day at a cannabis farm or at a pork processing plant. They don't care about those children. They only care about the children when they can use the children to make political points. You're separating families. Because last time I checked, criminals were separated from their families every day of the week, every hour of the day, every second of the day in this country and in the Western world. But you're separating children. We care about the children. No, they do not. Donald Trump today actually talked about the children, not just the children who were tragically lost. One of the most horrific natural disasters our country has seen, which is these floodings in Texas. Not only does his heart break for them, but what we see and what we now know beyond a doubt is that Donald Trump cares more about protecting these kids than the liberals ever will. Ever will. $300,000 children disappeared. Disappeared. What do I mean by that? Well, when they come across the border, unaccompanied minors, what happens? They're in federal detention. They can only be there for 72 hours. Then what happens? Most of them show up with just a crumpled piece of paper and a number on it. The federal government doesn't have the time, right? Don't have the time to check these numbers. Who are the people? So these individuals go to criminals, other illegal aliens. One case in Florida that a grand jury here in Florida determined actually went to an individual who did time for child battery. One individual in Texas had 45 children sent to his address. What do you think happened to those kids? Donald Trump's making it his mission to locate these children, find out what happened to them, and make things right. That's the kind of president we have. Now, the good news on the economic front, I especially love this because it's so delicious, given all of the the predictable drumbeat about tariffs, right? It was like, the tariffs are going to cause inflation. And they didn't care about inflation when Biden was, creating it, but now suddenly they care about inflation. The tariffs are going to cause inflation. Tariffs are going to cause a recession. Tariffs are going to cause a spike in prices. Well, what do we find out this week? This kills the media to report it, by the way. Japanese automakers announce what? They're going to raise prices? No. Japanese automakers announced this week that they are slashing auto prices for imports coming into the United States. Now, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? They're doing that because the tariffs make them force them to be competitive. They can't pass on the cost to the consumers because we're not going to pay that, right? So they have to cut prices. That's just one of many examples. And then today, late today, it's so great on a Friday, because sometimes Fridays news cycles aren't so great, but today was great. So Scott Bessent announces, with that kind of wry smile he has, which I love, Scott Bessent announces, well, it turns out that in June of this year, we have a $27 billion surplus in the United States. Surplus. Now, I wonder why that happened. That happened because of the tariffs and the money that the tariffs brought into the United States. Now, let's go back a year when Sleepy Joe was getting ready for that debate and he was all shot up with a B12 or whatever the heck they were giving him, peppy pills that didn't kick in. So remember that last June, what was happening? A $74 billion budget deficit for the month of June. So in 1 year, with this president and this economic team, we've had a $100 billion swing to the green. That is awesome news. And it keeps getting, this is like that one of the infomercials, it keeps getting better, there's more. Okay, there's more. The Ginsu knife comes in really quickly. All right, on job creation, again, America first works. Anytime someone tells you it doesn't, it does. So for job creation, last year, jobs created in the Biden administration, only 52% went to native-born Americans, okay? 52%. It's ridiculous, right? So much of it was going to illegal immigrants or foreign workers. From January to the end of June, 100% of the new jobs went to native-born Americans. Awesome. Love it. It's so great. All right. And, I know you're sad to hear this, but foreign jobs, 550,000 of those were lost to foreign workers. That's a good thing. Like, those jobs are going to Americans now, so it's all good. This could be the best news, or among the best news. Since the rise of Kami Mamdani, because that's good news. I mean, that is good news. In a hypothetical Senate primary matchup in Texas, the leading candidate is someone who hasn't even entered the race, the Democrat primary side, Senate race. Jazzy Crockett gets 35% of the vote. Jasmine. Now, why is that great? Because it tells us that the Democrat Party is so far left, it's left America. They're gone. So we have New York ready to embrace full-fledged communism with price controls, communes, not private property, abolish the police, all of that. If what he's saying is true, I mean, he could be like an Obama and just be kind of saying that, and he'll do kind of Obama stuff. So he could be doing a whole shell game on this. We don't really know. But we do know that young people who are traditionally calling themselves Democrats are really now socialists. And this is spreading in blue cities across the country. This is good news because it tells us they are totally out of ideas. I mean, we've seen this, right? We know how this story ends. We know how socialism ends, death, misery, suffering. And we certainly know how communism ends, the loss of freedom, the loss of real free enterprise, and obviously persecution, the end.